A priest just climbed a vertical cliff face with no rope, no harness, no safety equipment of any kind. He is barefoot. He is carrying a Bible that is over 500 years old, and when he reaches the top, 200 meters above the valley floor, he will unlock a church that has been active for 15 centuries. Then he will climb back down. The same way, barefoot, in the dark if he has to. This is not exceptional in Ethiopia. This is Tuesday. Quick pause. I recently started this channel to take you to the world's most extraordinary and hidden places. We're still at the very beginning, so every subscriber really matters. If this kind of content helps you understand the world better, consider subscribing. It helps me keep exploring and bring you even more breathtaking destinations and make even better videos. Thanks. Now, let's keep traveling together. Everything you think you know about Africa, set it aside. Not because it is wrong, but because Ethiopia was never part of the story most of the world was told. While the rest of the continent was being carved up, renamed, and rewritten by colonial powers, Ethiopia stood alone, undefeated, unconquered. The only country in Africa that looked European imperial armies in the eye and sent them home. What that means for the people who live here, for their culture, their architecture, their language, their faith, their identity, is something no documentary has ever fully captured. In this video, we are going to try. From a volcanic depression so hostile it makes the surface of Mars look habitable, to rock-hewn churches that predate the Gothic cathedrals of Europe. From ancient kingdoms that were trading with Rome while Europe was still in the Dark Ages, to tribes in a valley that have preserved ways of life unchanged for thousands of years. But I need to tell you 3 things I discovered in Ethiopia that I still haven't fully processed. A church that can only be reached by climbing a cliff that kills people who attempt it without faith. A lake with water so acidic it dissolves metal, and it is one of the most visually beautiful places on Earth. And a ceremony so extreme, so physically demanding, so completely unlike anything in the modern world that young men line up to endure it, because the alternative is a life without honor. 3 impossibilities, 1 country. Let's begin. The country that refused. Most of the world learned about Ethiopia from a famine. That is where the story usually starts, and because that is where it starts, most people never look further back, never ask what existed before, never wonder what kind of civilization could produce the dignity and resilience that Ethiopia has shown, repeatedly across centuries, in the face of everything history has thrown at it. So let's go back, far back. 3,000 years ago, in the northern highlands of what is now Ethiopia, a kingdom was taking shape that would eventually become one of the most powerful civilizations on Earth. The Kingdom of Aksum. By the 1st century of the Common Era, it was one of the 4 greatest powers in the world, alongside Rome, Persia, and China. It controlled trade routes connecting the Mediterranean to India. It minted its own coins, one of the first civilizations in Africa to do so. It developed its own writing system, Ge'ez, which is still used today in Ethiopian Orthodox Church liturgy. And in 330 AD, more than 50 years before Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire, the Kingdom of Aksum adopted Christianity. Ethiopia did not receive Christianity from missionaries or colonial influence. It arrived here independently, early, and took roots so deeply that 15 centuries later, it still defines the rhythm of daily life across the entire highland plateau. That is the country we are entering, not a place defined by poverty or crisis. A civilization that has been continuously building, praying, trading, and writing for 3,000 years, and that has the monuments to prove it. The Stones of Lalibela. In the 12th century, a king named Lalibela had a vision. He wanted to build a new Jerusalem, a holy city in the mountains of Ethiopia that his people could reach without crossing deserts and oceans and hostile territories, a place of pilgrimage that belonged entirely to them. And so he built one, not by stacking stone on top of stone, by doing the opposite, by taking a vast plateau of solid volcanic rock and carving downward into it, excavating churches from the living rock itself, so that the buildings emerge not above the ground, but below it, surrounded by trenches and courtyards cut directly into the earth. 11 churches, each one carved from a single piece of rock. No seams, no joints, no separate blocks fitted together. One continuous mass of stone, shaped by human hands into arches, windows, columns, altars, and ceilings that have survived 8 centuries of rain, earthquake, and time. The largest of them, Beit Medhain Alem, is believed to be the largest monolithic church on Earth. It stands 11 meters tall and is surrounded by a colonnade of 34 pillars, all carved from the same single rock as the building itself. Inside, priests in white robes move through candlelit corridors. The smell of incense fills chambers that have absorbed that same smell for 800 years. Pilgrims who have walked for days across mountain paths sit in prayer, as pilgrims have sat in this exact space since the reign of King Lalibela himself. UNESCO recognized Lalibela as a World Heritage Site. Architectural historians from around the world have studied it and reached a consensus that can be summarized simply: we do not fully understand how it was built. The engineering precision required to carve structures of this complexity from solid rock, using only the hand tools available in the 12th century, exceeds what modern analysis can comfortably explain. King Lalibela, according to Ethiopian tradition, had help. Divine help. Whether you believe that or not, standing in front of Beit Georgis, the most iconic of the 11 churches, its roof carved with 3 interlocking Greek crosses, its walls dropping 15 meters into a perfectly rectangular trench, the word impossible keeps arriving in your mind and refusing to leave. The cliff and the barefoot priest. Now, that priest I mentioned at the beginning, let me take you to him. In the Tigray region of northern Ethiopia, the landscape is defined by dramatic sandstone outcroppings. Vertical columns of rock rising from the valley floor, their faces sheer and smooth and hundreds of meters high. And carved into the face of one of these columns, at a height that makes your palms sweat just to look at, is Abuna Yamata Gu, a church built in the 5th century, active ever since. To reach it, you must climb. First, through a series of rock ledges, then along a narrow path carved into the cliff face, perhaps half a meter wide, with nothing between you and the valley floor 200 meters below. Then, at the very end, a vertical section where you press your body flat against the rock and move hand over hand, foothold by foothold, up the final face. There are no ropes, no harnesses, no safety equipment of any kind. The church does not provide them. The priests do not use them. And neither, historically, have the worshippers, the elderly women, the parents with children, the pilgrims who have been making this climb for 15 centuries because they believe that the difficulty of the journey is part of the prayer. People have died making this climb. That fact is known and acknowledged and has not, in 15 centuries, stopped the faithful from coming. Inside, the walls and ceiling are covered in frescoes, 5th century paintings of saints and apostles and biblical scenes executed in rich pigments that have survived 1,200 years of the mountain's temperature cycles and humidity. The colors are still vivid, the faces still carry expression. The detail is still precise. A church that can only be reached by risking your life, decorated with paintings that have outlasted empires, still in active use today. This is what Ethiopia does to your assumptions about what is possible and what is not. The valley at the beginning of time. At 30% of the way through this journey, I need to tell you something that reframes everything we have looked at so far. Ethiopia is not just the cradle of African civilization. According to the fossil record, it may be the cradle of all human civilization. The Omo Valley in southwestern Ethiopia, a broad, flat corridor carved by the Omo River through 760 kilometers of ancient landscape, has yielded some of the oldest hominid fossils ever found. Bones, tools, evidence of human presence stretching back hundreds of thousands of years to a period before modern Homo sapiens had spread to any other continent on Earth. This is where we came from, or very close to it. And today, in this same valley, more than 20 distinct tribes continue to live in ways that have changed remarkably little over centuries. Not as museum exhibits, not as tourist attractions, as living communities with their own languages, their own legal systems, their own cosmologies, their own art. The Mercy people are known for the clay lip plates worn by women, discs inserted into a cut in the lower lip, stretched gradually over years, growing in diameter as a mark of identity and status. The Hamar people practice a cattle-jumping ceremony that every young man must complete to be recognized as an adult, a barefoot run across the backs of a line of cattle, performed multiple times without falling, in front of the entire community. The Karo people decorate their bodies with chalk, ochre, and charcoal in patterns of extraordinary intricacy, each design carrying meaning within a visual language that outsiders are only beginning to understand. UNESCO recognized the Omo Valley as a World Heritage Site not primarily for its fossils, but for the living cultures that have continued here without interruption for longer than most of the world's civilizations have existed. What makes the Omo Valley impossible to process is not any single tribe or any single ceremony. It is the accumulation, 20 distinct cultures, 20 distinct languages, 20 distinct ways of being human. All within one valley, all continuing today, all facing the pressure of a world that moves faster every year. Quick pause. I recently started this channel to take you to the world's most extraordinary and hidden places. We're still at the very beginning, so every subscriber really matters. If this kind of content helps you understand the world better, consider subscribing. It helps me keep exploring and bring you even more breathtaking destinations and make even better videos. Thanks. Now let's keep traveling together. The ceremony that makes men. I mentioned a ceremony so extreme that young men line up to endure it. Here it is. Among the Hamar people of the Omo Valley, when a young man reaches the age where he must prove himself ready for adulthood, marriage, and the responsibilities of a man in Hamar society, he participates in the Ukuli Bula, the bull jumping ceremony. It begins the day before with the women. Female relatives of the young man, sisters, cousins, friends, present themselves to be whipped, deliberately, with thin branches across their backs, leaving scars that they will carry for the rest of their lives. These scars are not shameful. They are proof that the women of this young man's family were willing to suffer for him. And if he fails in his ceremony, if he falls from the cattle, he will owe those women a debt he can never fully repay. The following day, the cattle are lined up, 10, 15, sometimes 20 animals standing flank to flank. The young man must run across their backs, not once, multiple times, without falling, without touching the ground, in front of the entire community. If he succeeds, he crosses into manhood. He may marry, he may own cattle. He becomes a full member of Hamar society with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. If he fails, he must wait. Try again another year, and live with that failure in a community where everyone witnessed it. In a world that has largely eliminated the formal transition between childhood and adulthood, where young people often spend years uncertain of who they are and what is expected of them, the Hamar ceremony offers something rare, a clear moment, a defined test, a community witnessing a transformation. I am not saying it is without cost. The scars on those women's backs are real. but neither am I willing to dismiss what the Hamar have preserved. A ritual technology of identity that the modern world, for all its sophistication, has not managed to replace with anything equally coherent. The mountains above the clouds. From the Omo Valley, the journey moves north, up, dramatically and continuously up, into the Ethiopian highlands. The Simien Mountains, formed 30 million years ago when massive lava flows erupted across a vast plateau, then carved by wind and water and ice over tens of millions of years into the landscape that exists today. A series of dramatic escarpments where the plateau edge simply drops away vertically for hundreds of meters into cloud-filled valleys below. Standing at the edge of the Simien Escarpment is one of those experiences that makes the word view seem completely inadequate. The drop is not gradual, it is immediate. The ground is there beneath your feet, and then, in a single step's distance, it is not there at all, replaced by 500 meters of empty air, and far below, a valley so deep that clouds form inside it. Ethiopia's highest peak, Ras Dashen, rises to 4,550 meters within this range. It is among the highest peaks in Africa, and the plateau that surrounds it, at elevations between 3,000 and 4,000 meters, sustains an ecosystem found nowhere else on Earth. The Gelada, a species of primate unique to the Ethiopian highlands, found nowhere else on the planet. Unlike other monkeys and apes, Geladas are almost entirely terrestrial. They sleep on cliff faces at night, where predators cannot reach them, and spend their days on the plateau grasslands, grazing. Their diet is almost entirely grass. Their social structures are complex, noisy, and deeply hierarchical. Troops of several hundred individuals move across the plateau in a rolling wave of sound and movement, an experience that primatologists describe as one of the most extraordinary wildlife encounters in Africa. But the Simien Mountains are not simply beautiful, they are fragile. Population pressure, agriculture, and livestock grazing have pushed into the national park from every direction. UNESCO placed the Simien Mountains on its list of World Heritage in Danger in 1996, a designation that has since been partially reversed through conservation efforts. But the pressure remains. Standing on the escarpment edge, watching a troop of Geladas move across the grass below you against a backdrop of clouds and vertical cliffs, you feel what conservation really means. Not an abstract policy debate, a specific, irreplaceable thing that could end, and that the people working here are fighting every day to prevent from ending. The cave that time forgot. Halfway through this journey, the landscape changes completely. From mountains and highlands, we move east, into the semi-arid lowlands of the Ogaden region. The terrain flattens, the vegetation thins, the air dries, and beneath the surface of this seemingly featureless landscape, something extraordinary waits. Saf Omar Caves, a cave system stretching more than 15 kilometers through solid limestone, one of the longest cave systems in Africa, carved over millions of years by the Webb River, which still flows through its chambers today. Entering Saf Omar is a transition between worlds. The noise of the outside, wind, birds, the crunch of dry earth underfoot, disappears completely within the first 100 meters. What replaces it is the sound of moving water, amplified by stone chambers that reach 20, 30, 40 meters from floor to ceiling. Natural arches formed by millennia of erosion span the river in shapes that no human architect would dare attempt. Columns of white limestone reflect the beam of a torch into something that looks, in certain moments, more like a cathedral than a cave. The cave system is sacred to the local Oromo Muslim community. The holy man Saf Omar, from whom the caves take their name, is said to have retreated here in the 10th century to pray and study. His tomb is inside the cave, and local people still make pilgrimage here, entering the same chambers, wading through the same underground river, approaching the same tomb that has been a site of worship for 1,000 years. A natural wonder and a sacred space occupying the same darkness, the same water, the same stone. The place that looks like another planet. Now we arrive at the place I warned you about, the Danakil Depression, located in the northeastern corner of Ethiopia, at the junction of three tectonic plates, the Nubian, the Somali, and the Arabian. The Danakil is the geological equivalent of an open wound. The plates are pulling apart. The land is sinking. In some places, it sits more than 100 meters below sea level, the lowest point in Africa. And the heat generated by this tectonic activity, combined with the absolute absence of rainfall and the total absence of shade, creates conditions that average 50 degrees Celsius throughout the year. It is one of the hottest inhabited places on Earth. But that is not what makes the Danakil impossible to look away from. At the heart of the depression sits Dalol, a hydrothermal field where superheated brine pushes up through the crust and pools on the surface in formations of salt, sulfur, and mineral deposits. The colors are violent: acid yellow, neon green, rust orange, turquoise that looks digitally enhanced until you check and confirm that no filter has been applied. The water in these pools has a pH of 0. That is not a metaphor or an approximation. The acidity here is as strong as battery acid. Metal dissolves, organic matter does not survive. The pools are technically among the most hostile environments to life ever recorded on Earth, and they are extraordinarily, almost offensively, beautiful. Dalol is frequently cited by astrobiologists and NASA researchers as one of the best analogs on Earth for what conditions on other planets might look like. If life exists on Europa or Enceladus, if microorganisms can survive in acid and extreme heat, Dalol is the closest thing we have here to test that hypothesis. Standing at the edge of a Dalol pool, watching yellow sulfur crust crackle at the edge of water the color of antifreeze, with the temperature pressing down like a physical weight, it is the only place I have ever stood where the word alien felt literally accurate, not metaphorically, literally. The Mountain of Fire. From the alien colors of Dalol, the journey continues to a different kind of impossible. Erta Ale. Rising 613 meters from the floor of the Danakil Depression, Erta Ale is one of the most continuously active volcanoes on Earth. It has been erupting, without significant pause, for more than a century, and at its summit, it contains something that exists in only a handful of places anywhere on the planet: a permanent lava lake. Not a crater that occasionally fills with lava. A lake. Continuous, persistent, active, a body of molten rock that churns and bubbles and throws periodic fountains of fire against the crater walls, 24 hours a day, year after year, decade after decade. To reach Erta Ale's summit requires a night hike of several hours across black basalt rock, sharp-edged, unstable, in total darkness, except for the glow on the horizon that grows brighter as you climb. The ground is warm beneath your feet, the air smells of sulfur, and then, suddenly, you are at the crater rim, and below you, perhaps 40 meters down, a lake of fire the size of a football pitch churns and shifts and occasionally sends a wave of molten rock against the far wall with a sound like something tearing. The Afar people of the Danakil region call Erta Ale the Smoking Mountain. They have lived alongside it for generations. They know its rhythms. They know when it is dangerous and when it is merely terrifying. And they have built a culture and a way of life in one of the most hostile environments on Earth. The proof that human adaptability has no clear upper limit. The city where Africa governs itself. At 75% of this journey, everything shifts. From remote landscapes and ancient rituals, we arrive in Addis Ababa, a city of over 5 million people, the capital of Ethiopia, the diplomatic capital of Africa, and the place where, in 1963, leaders from 32 newly independent African nations gathered to form the Organization of African Unity, now the African Union, choosing Addis Ababa as its permanent headquarters. Not London, not Paris, not any of the cities that had been the centers of colonial power. A city in the one African country that had never been colonized. That choice was not accidental. It was a statement. Today, Addis Ababa is the seat of the African Union, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, and more than 90 international organizations and diplomatic missions. It is one of the most significant diplomatic cities on the continent, a place where African policy is debated, negotiated, and decided. Walking through Addis Ababa is a particular kind of experience. The city does not resolve into a single identity. It holds contradictions simultaneously. Modern glass towers rise beside open-air markets where the same goods have been traded for generations. Bajaj three-wheelers navigate alongside new light rail cars. The National Museum, which houses Lucy, the 3.2-million-year-old hominid skeleton discovered in Ethiopia's Afar region in 1974, sits 20 minutes by road from the African Union headquarters. Lucy, the earliest known human ancestor, housed in the capital of the country that produced her, in the building of the institution that governs the continent she left behind. That is Addis Ababa, ancient and urgent, historical and forward-moving, carrying everything that came before and building everything that comes next. The falls that move the Nile. From Addis Ababa, the journey takes us northwest to Bahir Dar on the shores of Lake Tana, and from there, 30 kilometers further, to a waterfall that has been powering one of the world's greatest river systems since before recorded history began. The Blue Nile Falls, known in Amharic as Tizabai, the smoke of the Nile. The Blue Nile River originates at Lake Tana, the largest lake in Ethiopia, fed by highland rainfall and mountain streams. It flows south from the lake, gathering volume, and then at the falls it drops 45 meters over a ledge nearly 400 meters wide, sending a permanent cloud of mist rising 50 meters into the air, visible from kilometers away. Approximately 85% of the water in the Nile River system, the river that sustained Egyptian civilization for 5,000 years, the river that built the pyramids, the river that is today the primary water source for more than 300 million people across 10 countries, originates in Ethiopia. The Blue Nile Falls is not simply a beautiful waterfall. It is the visible beginning of something that shaped human civilization more profoundly than almost any other geographical feature on Earth. Standing beside it, feeling the spray on your face, hearing the roar that makes conversation impossible, watching the mist catch the morning light and scatter it into rainbows that overlap and shift, you feel the weight of that. The connection between this particular piece of falling water in the Ethiopian highlands and the pyramids at Giza, between the spray on your face and 5,000 years of civilization downstream. Ethiopia does not simply connect to history. In many places, it is the source of it. The return. Ethiopia does not reveal itself quickly. It takes time. It requires patience. It demands that you set aside the categories and the frameworks and the assumptions you arrived with, and simply look at what is actually in front of you. What is in front of you is a country of 120 million people representing more than 80 distinct ethnic groups and languages. A country where Christianity and Islam have coexisted for over 1,000 years. A country where ancient rock-hewn churches and active lava lakes and living tribal cultures and a major diplomatic capital all exist simultaneously within a few hours of each other by air. A country that defeated a European colonial army in 1896 at the Battle of Adwa and has never forgotten what that victory means. A country that became the symbol of African resistance and independence for the entire continent, a country whose flag, green, yellow, and red, was consciously adopted by dozens of other African nations when they gained independence, as a tribute to the one country that had never lost its own. This is not the Africa you thought you knew. This is Ethiopia. And the version of it you have seen in this video, the ancient churches, the impossible cliffs, the volcanic depressions, the living tribes, the diplomatic capital, the source of the Nile, is still only the surface. Because in the next video, we go deeper, into the highlands that most visitors never reach, into communities that have preserved knowledge and traditions that the rest of the world has entirely forgotten, into a side of Ethiopia that even many Ethiopians have never seen. Tell me in the comments, which place in this video changed something in how you understand Africa? Because every time I make this journey, my answer is different. And stay with us, because the next one begins where this one was afraid to go. If you're enjoying this video, hit that like button, drop a comment with your thoughts, share it with someone who needs to see this. And if you're not subscribed yet, you know what to do.